My name is Maya Abramson, and I am a young Jewish-Canadian journalist in Toronto. Holocaust education has always been part of my life, but I find myself worrying about its future. I am lucky to know firsthand the emotional impact of meeting survivors and hearing their stories. But Nazi death camps were liberated in 1944 and 1945, so the living survivors are now well into old age. In October this year, I traveled to Washington, D.C. with my sisters and cousins. We went to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum there, and we were surrounded by kids who didn't seem to care about what they were looking at. I thought to myself that they would surely care more if they were face-to-face with a Holocaust survivor. Then, as we left the museum, I was struck by a wall of photographs. The exhibit featured replicas of Polaroids taken of the sky. There were over 1,000 of them, one from the location of each Nazi concentration camp. This was something I had never seen before, both haunting and beautiful. This began my journey to understand how innovation in Holocaust education can help people connect emotionally to the past, even after survivors are gone. I met with photographer Anton Kusters to ask him about his work, 1078 Blue Skies.
I started the work almost by accident, as I do with many of my work. And as with most of my works, everything starts with a personal note. In 1943, the SS came for my grandfather in a little town in Belgium, and they raided the house of my great-grandparents, so his parents, while he was there one night. But he managed to flee the house through a rooftop window, and managed to not get deported. And so initially I promised myself, or I promised my late grandfather, I will visit every camp because I don't know where they would have taken you. But little did I know that there were so many. I thought there were 23, so then that realization, and then the little bit of OCD person inside me said, like, well, there's no way back now. You have to go and visit them all. And so I spent 5.5 years traveling, not constantly traveling, but 5.5 years researching and traveling to every one of the 1078 concentration camps. Very recently, the original work was acquired to the permanent collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. It's so important that there is this educational aspect in this work. For example, at the Victoria and Albert Museum, they are going to exhibit the work for a year, but during that year, they are going to continually invite the school classes over to talk. And it's just heartbreaking to see how emotionally they connect and how they completely see it in a different way. The boring history lesson, which has then suddenly become a thing of the imagination to connect to. And me just knowing that this is one of the things that work has achieved is like, I mean, I couldn't be more proud and humble and happy at the same time.
Inspired by Anton's work, I set out to find more innovative forms of Holocaust education, which led me to a rehearsal room at the Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto.
I'm Jacqueline Grossman. I am a dramatic soprano, and I am half of Licht Ensemble. Licht Ensemble is a piano-vocal duo, and we are passionate about exploring and sharing music by Jewish composers from the Holocaust. To be honest, I didn't know that existed. I didn't realize that there was an artistic life in the ghettos and concentration camps of the Holocaust, and I fell so desperately in love with the music and the art and the people so quickly, and shared it with Nate, who felt the same way, and that's sort of how it all began.
One of the more dramatic stories is that we do this set of songs by a composer named Edwin Geist, who was a German, half-Jewish composer who moved to Lithuania when Nazi restrictions started making it impossible to work in Germany. But then, lo and behold, Lithuania also, the city of Kovno was turned into a ghetto around him as he was living there, basically. He was killed. His wife killed herself after his death. And one of his friends, or their friends, a violinist, broke into their locked apartment after they died and just scooped up all of the music that was like lying around so that it wouldn't be destroyed. And now that music is part of a digital archive on the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Like his handwritten papers are just, digitized as PDFs online, and we perform from those.
I think that the ultimate goal of doing this work is threefold for me. The first is that this music is really good and it should be performed regularly by all musicians. It should belong within our canon and would have if not for the Holocaust. So the first is like welcoming it back into the classical music world. Holocaust education is waning in North America and around the world. And as we lose survivors, it is so important that we find new ways to create Holocaust educational opportunities for young audiences and audiences really of all ages. We know that the best way to combat anti-Semitism is through education. So knowing about the Holocaust and keeping this recent history in mind is so important. And I think that music and art is a really accessible way to invite people into this conversation.
I think it vividly puts you in the shoes of the people who wrote this music, because the music is really, really direct, and it's kind of these people writing about their lives, of course, incredible hardship, but also just everything that comes with being human. So I think it's a way of kind of humanizing the statistics.
The artists who created this music, it was a way for them to express what they were dealing with and to find peace and joy and, express anger and all of the things that they were going through, because, music was a form of resilience and survival. And that's really, I think, what it still is today.
The power of Licht Ensemble's performance is that it immerses the audience in the music of the past. But in my journey, I found an even more immersive form of Holocaust education in Shadowlight's traveling cattle car.
3 days and 3 nights, the cattle car was going, stopping, starting, stopping. We were trying to read the station names for a while. It was Hungarian.
My name is Sagi Connerfort, and I'm the artist who helped develop the Shadowlight cattle car experience. Shadowlight began with Jordana Leibowitz, who is its founder. She was studying Holocaust education and had begun to become active in that space. She was a student at Guelph University, and she wanted to do some kind of Holocaust education program for the students of the school. So she found an abandoned replica cattle car that had been built for a film, and it's just kind of abandoned afterwards. She was able to purchase it and bring it to the school and drop it in the middle of campus.
At the University of Guelph, a replica cattle car similar to the one used to transport Jews and others to concentration camps during World War II is now parked at the university.
She filled it with a bunch of posters and information and allowed basically students who were just walking through campus to kind of drop in and learn a little bit. But what I proposed was we remove the posters, get rid of all the paper, and basically make a 360-degree video that's inside the car. That could essentially be like a seamless experience for an audience who is standing inside of it and better tell the story of the Holocaust survivors. And so we found 2 Holocaust survivors who had journeyed in and survived the journey in a cattle car just like this. And in 2019, basically started the the project, and it took about 2 years until 2021 when it had its first showing.
On behalf of Shadow Light and the team, welcome to the cattle car exhibit. If you take a look around, you'll see that there are many different footprints on the ground, and you'll also notice that they're not just of one size. There are many different sizes to show that there were not only adults in here, but there were also children, all the way from like newborns to the oldest people. During the war, there would be 100 people. So if you can imagine that, even with a regular class or a group of 25 to 30 people in here, it would be, feel a little bit packed. Just the, multiplying that by 4, it's unimaginable.
And the boxcar plays heavily in my mind because that's the transition from being a human being to becoming a number of which they could dispose at their own will.
Part of the experience isn't just like the emotional journey. That's how we start. We do tell the story of the 2 Holocaust survivors, and it feels like a film. But the back half of the experience is sort of like a Holocaust primer, sort of almost like a museum exhibit with the benefit of some digital flares, right? Like moving videos and that sort of thing. And we designed the exhibit to have that educational component because there are a lot of people who don't have any access to Holocaust education. Like there are people that the car has seen in the last month that have said, I've never heard the word Holocaust before. So there is a ton of learning that needs to be done.
How did hatred lead to genocide? Where can we see prejudice in ourselves? Where do we see discrimination today?
I think things have more of an impact on them when we understand them emotionally than intellectually. I think intellectual learning is important and we have to aim for it. But I think when you're looking for the most amount of impact you can make in a small amount of time with a limited attention span, I think you need to look at the emotional side of things. And if you can create an emotional journey for someone, then that makes it a lot more possible for them to engage. I think when they have no frame of reference from their own perspective, when they, just see it as something that's being told to them, I think that's a lot harder to engage and a lot harder to appreciate and understand. But if it's something that they're a part of too, then I think that understanding grows a lot.
Their memories are now your memories. Don't let them fade into the dark.
As Shadowlight tours the cattle car around the United States, I wondered if there were similar experiences for students here permanently in Toronto. This ultimately led me to the construction site of the new revitalized Toronto Holocaust Museum.
I'm Dara Solomon, and I'm the Executive Director of the Toronto Holocaust Museum, part of UJA Federation of Greater Toronto. Our center was founded in the 1980s by Holocaust survivors when they were ready to start sharing their stories. It became apparent about 10 years ago that we needed a new space. The Holocaust survivors who used to stand in front of groups of children were approaching the end of that era. And so we know that hearing first-person testimony has been so impactful. So students, when they come into the museum, will have the opportunity to interact with recorded testimony in these very dynamic, state-of-the-art screens and interactives. There's 11 of these large-scale testimony kiosks that are throughout the museum. So each step of the way, you're of course surrounded by your usual museum graphics, text, photographs, and artifacts, but then at the heart of it is the survivor voice. And it's short clips, so you can hear from many different survivors to hear a range of experiences during the Holocaust, because we want to make sure there's multiple narratives being told. There's a whole series where you can follow one survivor on an iPad that triggers augmented reality content. You hold up the iPad to a marker and suddenly you're seeing people in the space and you're making choices and answering questions. So it's very dynamic and interactive, which we know is a powerful tool for learning. There's also one that's in direct response to this rise in anti-Semitism that we're seeing. And we get reports all the time, unfortunately, from school boards about incidents that have happened.
Investigations into disturbing incidents of anti-Semitism reported at the Toronto District School Board have sparked calls for emergency action and board-wide interventions.
We are deeply concerned by this latest incident, which I have to tell you is really devastating.
The latest described as a brazen, hurtful and hateful incident. An 8th grade Jewish teacher at Valley Park Middle School, a child of Holocaust survivors, was targeted.
Back into the room, several students surrounded her and gave her the Heil Hitler salute.
In response to the latest incident involving anti-Semitic graffiti on 3 separate high schools, the Toronto District School Board said, "We are working with Toronto Police to provide any assistance that we can as they continue to investigate these incidents, which are harmful and completely unacceptable." Unacceptable, and according to Jewish organizations across Canada, happening more and more often.
I've heard a lot of really bad things about, things like money being thrown at Jewish students.
It takes about 2 minutes on social media to run across anti-Jewish attacks and tropes. Anti-Semitism has been the most reported hate crime in Ontario's capital city for several years running. Violence and vandalism have struck synagogues in the United States and beyond. And of course, that's all against a historical experience of genocide that few communities have had to face. In short, it's unrelenting.
In some cases, a visit to the Holocaust Museum might be an appropriate response and tool, and it will directly connect things that have happened in the Holocaust, like draw those lines to hateful speech during the Holocaust so they begin to see the impact of their behaviors. Just outside these glass doors is the Azrieli Legacy Hall. This will be the first experience that visitors encounter. There's stairs up from the main floor up into here, and this will be with hanging images of pre-war Jewish life, really immersing students in that richness and the fabric of European Jewry before the war. And the first testimony kiosk is here, where you'll first hear from survivors reflecting on what Jewish life was like before the war. The first experience is in this theater, this nice, beautiful curved screen. And there's a few different film experiences that we have developed, knowing that we're going to have audiences that are coming in with absolutely no knowledge of the Holocaust, and then others who know it, maybe grew up around the narrative of the Holocaust very closely. So we'll choose the film based on the audience, and then for the general public there'll be sort of the general film that really lays the groundwork of how the Holocaust happened, so it prepares you for what you're about to see. Like you're making a connection, a human connection with people through this experience that we've created, and it's been a very long time in the making. We're very lucky that we have Holocaust survivors who can join us for the opening, not as many as we had hoped, but still a number of our founders are still with us, and we'll see this happen, and their families will be here, and that's incredibly satisfying.
It is very important, the new generation, because that is the future, and they should really be taught, and they should tell the whole world what really can happen when people are not tolerant to each other.
I think it gives them hope, and it makes them feel like that all the work that they have done and the time that they dedicated in their later years to Holocaust education will continue after they're gone. Yes.
The loss of survivors will be devastating, but Holocaust education cannot stop there. I had the privilege of meeting many people taking creative approaches to this work, and their innovations will help people connect emotionally to this tragic history long into the future. In a time when Holocaust education is so important, it's inspiring to see everything that's being done to keep these memories alive and relatable for everyone.